Hey y'all, LoudLilDucky here. Today, continuing on with the Aaron Spencer case as we are catching up on all the documents to get ready for his trial. This document about excluding evidence on this motion in limine will it answer, is this self-defense or is this murder? Is there still justice for Aaron Spencer? Or is Aaron Spencer charged correctly? This motion will have you asking hard questions to yourself in your beliefs and reconciling it with the law. But let's dive in. In the Circuit Court of Lonoke County, Arkansas, First Division, in the Aaron Spencer case, this is filed on October 1st, 2025, motion in limine to exclude evidence of Spencer's conduct from July 2024, pursuant to Arkansas's Rules of Evidence 401, 402, 403, 404, and Andrew v. White, 220 LED 2nd 340 US 2025. Comes now the defendant Aaron Spencer through and his attorney Michael Keel of Lassiter and Casanelli, and of his motion states, decedent Michael Fosler was charged with multiple felony counts of SA ing Spencer's daughter in case number. Fosler was arrested on July 11, 2024, after Spencer's daughter made initial disclosures on July 8, 2024. The state's discovery file contains a report from Lonoke County Sheriff's Office Deputy John Ingram about a meeting with Leanna Higginbotham and her daughter Paula McFarland on July 8, 2024. The report alleges Higginbotham and McFarland told Ingram that Aaron Spencer had requested details about their mutual friend, Michael Fosler, and then when Higginbotham and McFarland asked Spencer why he wanted Fosler's information, Spencer told them that Fosler had ARPed his teenage daughter and allegedly begged them for them not to call the police. Ingram's report then notes he spoke with Spencer at his residence and that he was extremely angry at first and refused to talk about the possible ARPing, but then calmed down and cooperated fully with law enforcement's investigation into Fosler. This court must exclude any reference to or evidence about Spencer's conduct in July 2024 pursuant to Arkansas Rules of Evidence 401, 402, 403, and 404B. Such evidence has no independent relevance and does not fall into any of the listed or known exceptions to Arkansas Rules of Evidence 404B's general proscription on character evidence. Further, any probative value that the evidence has with Spencer does not concede is grossly outweighed by the dangers of unfair prejudice and confusion of the issues. The evidence is not relevant and it is inadmissible pursuant to Arkansas Rules of Evidence 401 and 402. Spencer's conduct in July 2024 has no bearing on whether his use of force against Fosler more than 3 months later in response to Fosler's kidnapping, essaying, and possibly eliminating his daughter as a witness in his own criminal case was justified. The evidence must be excluded as relevant or irrelevant accordingly. Rule 404B of the Arkansas Rules of Evidence provides evidence of the crimes, wrongs, or acts is not admissible to prove the character of a person in order to show that he acted in conformity therewith. It may, however, be admissible for other purposes such as proof of motive, opportunity, intent, preparation, plan, knowledge, identity, of absence or mistake, or accident. Prior bad acts evidence must be independently relevant to the main issue, relevant in the sense of tending to prove something material point rather than merely to prove that the defendant is a criminal. Lindsay v. State, a 1994 and they did not give the citation for that case. Even if relevant under Rule 404B, evidence may still be excluded under Arkansas Rules of Evidence 403 if its probative value is substantially outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice, confusion of the issues, or misleading the jury. See Williams v. State, an Arkansas appellate case. The state is not entitled to introduce evidence of other offenses to persuade the jury that the accused is a criminal and thus likely to have committed the crimes he has been charged with. Did not give a citation. Specifically, proof of other crimes is never admitted when its only relevance is to show the defendant is a man of bad character or addicted to crime. I don't think Aaron Spencer is addicted to crime. The evidence at issue has no independent relevance to the charged act. Whether Spencer asked associates of Fosler for information about Fosler more than 3 months prior to the charged act in this case has no relevance to the charged act. Whether Spencer was angry and or initially refused to cooperate with law enforcement into the investigation of Fosler, an investigation he then cooperated with fully, has no relevance to the charged acts either. We'll see here in a minute what the state has to say about this. Because it has to do with that same party, I can see the judge finding it to be relevant. Sometimes 3 months prior doesn't have anything to do with it, but it also doesn't have to do with his feelings towards Fosler, because it would be different if it was like Spencer threatening Fosler or doing other things to Fosler, and then now 3 months later after those threats this happened, but that doesn't seem, so that's where I'm thinking the relevance might not be there. But could I see a judge finding a way to say that they think that this is relevant? I could, but we'll just have to see. Such evidence may be relevant if Spencer was alleged to have stalked Fosler and killed him at his home or out in public. However, this is not what happened here. Rather, Spencer awoke in the middle of the night to find his teenage daughter missing and happened upon Fosler's truck as it turned down Spencer's street, while out searching for his daughter in his truck. Spencer was not looking for Fosler, rather he was looking for his daughter. That's true, because it wouldn't have mattered who took his daughter or who she was in the vehicle with. He was out searching for them, and he was going to bring his daughter back home. It just so happened to be Fosler, and then Fosler did other acts while Spencer was trying to get him to pull over and hand him back his daughter, and Fosler not complying with that. So, yeah, he wasn't out there searching for Fosler. They had a suspicion that it was him, but really, she could have been with a best friend. She could have been with some other guy that she likes, that's her age. It could have been anybody. At this moment, they didn't know. They had suspicions. And then when he saw him, it just confirmed the suspicions. He just happened to find Fosler with his 14-year-old daughter mere months after Fosler's arrest for SAing her. What followed was a lawful use of force in defense of his daughter and himself. The issue here is whether Spencer validly used force in the defense of his daughter and himself, not whether he had any specific intent to kill Fosler prior to the incident at issue. The evidence is inadmissible accordingly. Instead, this evidence is the worst kind of propensity evidence meant to encourage the jury to find Spencer guilty in accordance with his character for having sought out Fosler's information to handle the issue himself, despite no actual proof of such, to encourage a vigilante narrative that is simply believed by the actual facts of the charged offense, rather than the evidence associated with the charged offense. So they're going to try to spin this narrative that he wanted Fosler's information prior. And so when he got Fosler, to himself, he did this because he was wanting to do it prior to anyways, and this was just the perfect opportunity. The thing is Fosler was committing a crime against Spencer's daughter once again during this. Wasn't like he found him at a bar and was like, "Okay, I've got you alone now," or went to his house. I don't even know if this is going to really matter to the jury, even if it does come in. But I mean, it might. Any marginal relevance the evidence may have, which Spencer does not concede, is outweighed by the dangerous confusion of the issue and unfair prejudice and must be excluded pursuant to Rule 403 accordingly. The trial would become about whether Spencer had previously sought to handle Fosler himself in July of 2024, rather than whether he was justified in killing Fosler in October of 2024, following Fosler's abduction of his daughter. Yeah, he's had information since July of 2024 and when charges, came upon Fosler. And from July to October, Spencer hadn't done anything. So why would he do his vigilante now? Let me know if you think that this is relevant or not. Should it come in to the trial or should it be kept out? The state will be able to argue some sort of pre-existing intent despite no alleged connection between Spencer's July 2024 comments and use of force against Fosler in October 2024. This court must exclude the evidence pursuant to Rule 403 accordingly. The evidence does not fit into any exception listed in 404B, and in fact is precisely the type of evidence that Rule 404B exists to keep out. Further admission of this evidence would violate Spencer's due process rights. Let's see, they cite something that says, when evidence is introduced that is so unduly prejudiced that it renders the trial fundamentally unfair, the due process clause of the 14th Amendment provides a mechanism for relief. And then they put internal quotation is omitted. This court must exclude the evidence at issue accordingly. Wherefore, the defendant respectfully requests that this court enter an order precluding the state from offering any evidence about his July 2024 conduct during the trial in this matter, or alternatively, for a hearing whereby the state may specifically or specify which exception to the Rule 404B it believes applies and whether the court may determine whether such evidence will be admissible in a jury trial. And then it is signed by Aaron Spencer's defense attorney and shows that they served this motion on October 1st, 2025 to the Chief DPA, John Huggins, and they e-filed it. Now we have about a month later or so, on November 7th, 2025, the state's response to this motion. So it's state's response to defendant's motion Limine to exclude evidence. So now let's see what the state has to say about this. Comes now the state of Arkansas by and through Chief Deputy Prosecuting Attorney John Huggins, and for its response to the defendant's motion in Limine to exclude evidence states, Aaron Spencer, hereinafter Spencer, is charged with the murder in the second degree in the killing of Michael Fosler, hereinafter Fosler. The chain of events leading to Fosler's murder began on July 8, 2024. When defendant arrived at Leanna Higginbotham's house, an acquaintance of Fosler, and told her that he had ARPed his minor daughter and wanted Fosler's phone number and address. Spencer told Higginbotham, "Don't call anyone. Don't call the police." Okay. Out of concern, Higginbotham spoke with a family member about her interaction with Spencer. Her family member, a mandated reporter, was required to report the ARP allegation to law enforcement and reported them to Lonoke County Sheriff's Office, LCSO. The same day, Sergeant John Ingram and Deputy Brian Duke of the Lonoke County Sheriff's Office responded to Spencer's residence to open an investigation about the ARPing allegation concerning his daughter. The interaction was recorded by Sergeant Ingram on his body-worn camera, and a transcription of the relevant portions are included as Attachment A, which we will get to see Attachment A. And the transcription of the body camera, which we don't have the body camera, so it's next. I mean, that's one of the next best things. Sergeant Ingram asked Spencer, "Is there any truth to this?" Spencer replied, "I don't know." While attempting to investigate the allegations, Spencer was mainly concerned about the identity of the mandated reporter and his beliefs in the inadequacies of the judicial system. Sergeant Ingram stated to Spencer, "We still don't live in a country where you can take the law into your own hands." Spencer responded, "Bullshit." Okay, not. I can get that, saying that in the heat of the moment. Um, and they say that that's an attachment A. Eventually, Spencer's wife provided information to the deputies regarding the essay of their daughter. Spencer's daughter was interviewed at the Wade Knox Children's Advocacy Center on July 8, 2024. Cabot Police Department obtained a warrant on July 11, 2024 for Fosler's arrest on one count of ARPing and one count of internet stalking of a child, both Y felonies. Fosler was arrested the same day and taken to Lonoke County Jail. Fosler was seen at his first appearance hearing after arrest by Lonoke County District Court Judge on July 12th, 2024, and his bond was set at $50,000. You know what you don't put in here is what he actually paid to bond out. And who that Lonoke District Court Judge was. Because while the person reading this, the judge reading this, knows exactly who those people are, let's not put it in there so that maybe the public reading this doesn't know who it is. But the person who did let Fosler out of jail and set a low bond was Judge Barbara Elmore. Same judge that's presiding over Aaron Spencer's case. So, some of this is on her hands. Not all of it, because it's still Michael Fosler's problem that he violated his bond conditions and wiped his ass with that piece of paper of the no contact order. But, you know, Fosler was also ordered not to have contact with any minor, a violation of which would result in his bond being revoked. Yet he obviously didn't care. He thought July to October was enough time. And then he was tired of waiting. Like, how closely was the courts paying attention to where he was and to see that he hadn't been around minors? Not that close. Fosler made bond on July 17, 2024, and was released with conditions of pretrial release, including the no contact order. Oh, thank you for doing the bare minimum to keep our community and children safe, Judge Elmore. On October 8th, 2024, so 3 months later, not immediately after he was released, but 3 months after he was, released on bond, October 8th, 2024 at 1:12 a.m., Aaron Spencer's wife called 911 to report their daughter was missing. She said that they found their daughter's bed made up to look like she was asleep. but was not in bed. Consistent with Spencer's beliefs expressed to law enforcement on July 8, 2024, Spencer proceeded to take the law into his own hands. Spencer later told investigators that he immediately got into his truck to look for Fosler, stating he was vigilante for him, or he was vigilant for him. Okay, once again, not great statements. I don't know if they have that on body cam or audio where they have Spencer saying this. That might be in the transcript that we're going to read. Spencer left his home traveling westbound on Highway 236. Spencer stated as he was turning on to Highway 31 at the intersection of Highway 236, he saw Fosler's white Ford truck pass him, turning on Highway 236 eastbound back towards Spencer's house with his daughter in the passenger seat. Somewhere where Spencer's daughter is not supposed to be. Spencer turned around and began following Fosler. He was honking and flashing his lights in an attempt to stop Fosler. Yeah, Fosler should have pulled over. After following Fosler for approximately 6 miles, Spencer struck Fosler's truck containing both Fosler and Spencer's daughter. Well, I don't know how hard he hit it. I don't know what the weather was like that day or anything, or what speed this was happening at, but as a result, Fosler's truck was rammed into a ditch, striking a wooden entry gate post. After exiting his vehicle, Spencer then began to fire on Fosler. Okay, nothing happened in between, according to the prosecution. We'll have to wait and see what Aaron Spencer's report of this is, but this next part is very bad for Aaron Spencer. This next part could be the part that actually cooks him. Spencer continued to fire a total of 16 times. 15 of the 16 rounds entered Fosler. So, 16 times is a lot and can be considered overkill. And in the eyes of the law, this looks like it is more than just self-defense. If he would have just shot him once or twice, self-defense really would be the answer. And I did not know until reading this that the gun was fired 16 times. Now, this could be in dispute. I don't know. But I could see from the prosecution's standpoint where they originally could have thought self-defense, but then when they find out about 16 times, they're like, no, that went into murder territory because you were still firing when he wasn't a threat to you or your daughter if you're doing this. So he might be charged correctly. But this is where it'll be interesting with the jury because the jury is to follow the law. And this could make him be found guilty. Or is the jury going to say, I don't care if he would have shot him 100 times, he's a PDF file? I mean, that's not the correct answer, but this right here might be the thing that sinks Aaron Spencer's case. And if this sinks Aaron Spencer's case, there will be no Aaron Spencer for sheriff. Now, I know Spencer's doing what a lot of us would love to do, but in the eyes of the law, is it correct? I want to call balls and strikes on this. Continues saying, after firing, Spencer pistol whipped Fosler in the face. Then, for the first time that night, Spencer finally called 911 at 1:34 a.m., stating Michael Fosler is effing dead on the side of the road for trying to kidnap my daughter. I had no choice. I don't know if that is correct either. I don't know if he called after everything happened and nobody called before. Well, his wife had called before to report it. So they tried to get police to come out there. But maybe Aaron Spencer himself didn't call. Aaron Spencer should have called. Because you got 1:12 a.m. to 1:34 a.m. that all this goes down. In fact, Spencer had multiple choices that night. Spencer could have called 911 once he discovered Fosler and his daughter. Spencer stated in his interview that he was driving so fast that he could not unlock his phone to call 911. I don't know how fast Fosler's vehicle was going. Maybe they've got black box data to see that they were going pretty fast. Do I think that Aaron Spencer should have been on the phone with 911 as he's doing this and being like, okay, I have found her. This is where they're at. I've got him to stop. Maybe there could have been things that were done better, even if this still would have ended the same way and Spencer would have only shot him like 1 or 2 times. There are things that could have always gone better, but in the spur of the moment, are you thinking about all that? While his wife has already called them, does he think that he needed to call them too? However, a forensic examination of his phone from the minutes leading up to Fosler's killing paints a different story. Not only does the examination show that his phone was unlocked, but was in use. Spencer had a 1 minute and 39-second phone call with a family member at 1:16 a.m., receiving multiple text messages marked red, and called his wife twice at around 1:31 a.m., all before calling 911. Spencer also had good reason to believe his daughter had snuck out of the house and had not actually been kidnapped. Miss me right here with this, prosecution. I don't care if his daughter snuck out of the house. The daughter is a minor. And it's not going to sit well with a jury if you try to blame this girl. Now, does she know what she's doing and know what's going on? I'm sure she does. But she is a teenager. And this adult male is not supposed to be trying to be with a teenage preteen girl. Oh, but the girl snuck out to be with the predator. Fuck off with that. Fuck right off with that. Do not. The, why would this girl even want to go with him? I don't know. Maybe because he's groomed her. He has no business with her. He's not supposed to be with her. There's a no contact in order. He has charges for things that he's done to her. She is not in the right headspace to be making decisions. So, yeah, she might make wrong ones. Why is she going with him? Is she scared? Does she have feelings for this guy? which are so messed up, which we talk about in the Sandra Birchmore case too. But this is not on the daughter. I don't care if she went out of the house with him. He's an adult and he knows better. Spencer did not want police involved when he initially discovered his daughter was essayed, nor did he want them involved when he found Fosler with his daughter. Spencer's understandable rage did not give him the legal right to kill Fosler. His belief, espoused on July 8, 2024, to Sergeant Ingram that it was bullshit that we still live in a country where you cannot take the law into your own hands, runs counter to our entire justice system. That statement I have to agree with. I said, I'm going to call balls and strikes. When I think the prosecution is being ridiculous and I don't agree with what they're saying, I'm going to say it. When there are things that are bad for Aaron Spencer, I'm going to say it. This is why we need to look at all the facts in the case. Because I get, as a parent, if someone was to do things to your child, such as what Fosler did to Aaron Spencer's daughter, we would want to do those things. We would have to refrain from those things. But what do you do? This is a situation that no parent should ever find themselves in. But because of sick fuckers out there like Michael Fosler, here we are. The evidence that the defense wants to exclude regarding Spencer's statements, wherein it clearly indicated he did not wish police involvement in his daughter's ARP investigation, his implicit comments that he would take the law into his own hands and should not be charged with a crime, are directly related to his actions on the night of October 8th, 2024. Not only are the statements by a party opponent, so they don't fall into the hearsay category because it's for a party opponent. The evidence is also clearly admissible under Arkansas Rules of Evidence 404B, which allows evidence of other acts that are admissible to prove motive, intent, plan, and knowledge. Evidence is relevant if having any tendency to make existence of any fact that is of a consequence to determine of the action more probable or less probable than it would be without the evidence. Arkansas Rules of Evidence 401 added Spencer's affirmation that one can take the law into one's own hands makes the extrajudicial act of killing Fosler more probable, done without any consideration of the law on self-defense or the defense of others. Wherefore, the state requests this court to deny the defendant's motion and allow this testimony to be elicited by the state in their case in chief as a statement by a party opponent and under Arkansas Rules of Evidence 404B, respectfully submitted, John Huggins, Chief Deputy Prosecuting Attorney, and they served the papers to the defendant. And then now we're going to get to the body camera transcript. So we start off with Ingram saying, "Hey, sir." Then another officer says he's gonna, inaudible, "By the way." Ingram says, "Are you Aaron?" Spencer says, "Y'all creeping around here. What's going on?" Ingram says, "We're not creeping around. We're just trying to make contact with you." Spencer says, "With me?" Ingram says, "Aaron Spencer?" Spencer says, "What do you need to make contact with him for?" Ingram says, "Well, we've got a report from a mandated reporter that your child may have been involved with a ARPing situation, and so we needed to talk to you about it." Spencer says, "Who's the mandated reporter?" Ingram says, "Well, it's a mandated reporter." Spencer says, "Cool. Who was that?" "Well, I'm just letting you know. So, I mean, is there any truth to this? And Spencer says, I don't know. Ingram says, you don't know? Well, would you like to talk to us about it? Spencer says, I'm not sure. Ingram, okay, we're just. Spencer says, I'm not sure what's going on. Ingram says, we're just here to help. Spencer says, do you got any more information than that? Ingram says, well, here's what we were told. We received a call to our dispatch. Somebody says, who called you? Ingram says, sorry, a mandated reporter had to call us. Someone that you spoke with earlier is a mandated reporter who's under, she has to report what she heard you say. And then a male says, and who is that? And then Spencer chimes in and says, so who heard me say what? What did I say? Another male says, has something been called before? Ingram, what's that? Another male says, has something been called before? Ingram, no, but I'm explaining it. If we have, if we get a call saying that there potentially may have been a child who was ARPed, Mel says, uh-huh. Ingram says, then obviously we have to respond. The person gave your name as the person who was the father of the child who says they may have been ARPed. Spencer says, okay. And then Ingram says, so obviously we had to come and talk to you and see if there's any truth. Spencer says, who called and made these allegations that something might have happened? So far, interesting. Yeah, he wants to know who said this. Who called it in? Which doesn't matter necessarily. Would it matter to you who called it in? Maybe because, you want to know who you can trust. I get why the police can't give that over for their protection so that, you know, maybe not Spencer, but if somebody would maybe retaliate against the person who reported it, and brought it to the police's attention because maybe he did want to handle it himself, or maybe he wanted to investigate more and find out more about it before he went to the police. Um, do you see anything wrong with Spencer wanting to know who said it? Also, could it be somebody that is trying to get ahead of something? Is it maybe somebody that's on Fosler's side and is trying to act like, well, we're the ones who reported it to the police? So, I mean, there could be different things. So, but do you think that it's weird that Spencer is wanting to know so badly who this is, or would you be the same way? He continues with an officer saying, sir, that's really irrelevant. We're just asking. Spencer says, it's not irrelevant. Officer, it is. It really is. I mean, we're here for the child. Spencer says, then let's play the guessing game. Then, right? I mean, come on. Ingram says, no. You probably know who you spoke to today about looking for some person's address. I mean, you know. Spencer says, who? So the officers are telling Spencer, you know who you talked to. They said it was a she, so he talked to some female. So he should be able to figure out who called it in. And the officers are not giving it to him. So Ingram says, a Mr. What was it? Mike Folsom, which it's not Folsom. That's why it says sick. It's Fosler or something. Spencer says, who's that? Ingram says, okay, well, I mean, we're trying to help, okay? Spencer says, are you? Ingram says, yes, but we can only help so much. If you're not going to talk to us, then obviously we can't. Spencer just asked, who was that? Like you said, Mike Folsom. Even if he knows that you are saying Mike Fosler, Aaron Spencer may not really know who that is, and maybe you can tell him more information about him. I don't know. Spencer says, I'm just wondering who called you saying that there was somebody that was harmed, and that Ingram says, nobody, no one said anybody was harmed or armed. Spencer says, harmed. H. Ingram, harmed. Okay. Spencer, yeah, I'm carrying. Ingram, yeah, I can see you carrying. Still, that's, Spencer says, I'll keep my hands up here so nobody gets. Ingram says, that's fine. I mean, again, we're not here to cause any problem for you. Spencer says, okay. Ingram says, we just need to investigate. Another officer says, we're not the bad guy. We're just trying to help. Ingram, yeah, yeah. The officer says, I understand, I understand your emotional feelings. And then there's something inaudible said. Spencer says, let me ask you a question. The officer says, so I understand. Spencer says, let me ask you a question, okay? Officer says, yeah. Ingram, yep. Spencer, if those allegations are true, and there was a child that was ARPed, okay? What's going to happen to that man when you arrest and prosecute him and this and that? 3 to 5? What's he rolling around, cruising, grooming? Officer says, like I said, I understand. I have a kid. Spencer says, let me. No, no. Seriously? Seriously. So if that happened to your kid, right? Officer said, it did. And it did. And Spencer says, and so you went to the police? The officer says, uh-huh. Spencer says, and how'd that work out? Where's he? Where's the accused today? So Spencer is staying here. This is back in July, remember? So 3 months still before Fosler is dead. Spencer is like, this man, let's say this man did those things to that child. What does he get? Like 3 to 5 years? And then what? He's back out on the streets, rolling around, grooming children again. He just gets to move on with his life, basically, with like a slap on the wrist. When he's caused pain to that child that's going to last a lifetime, he just gets to kind of go on with his life and just get a slap on the wrist that says, don't do that again, okay? And then they get back out and they usually do it again. And Fosler would have gotten back out and done stuff again because he couldn't even make it 3 months without making contact with Spencer's daughter. So I get where Aaron Spencer is coming from. And I think even the officers understand and get where Spencer is coming from. They're not allowed to encourage that. They can understand it and be like, "Listen, man, I felt the same way as you. You just can't do those things and you have to get the police involved and you have to let the justice system figure it out." That's hard to do because you do want to go cause pain. Because there are a lot of people I know that, they're like, I'm not the type to break the law, but if somebody hurts my child, I will go away for a long time. You hear people say that type of stuff all the time. Because you can hurt me, you can hurt others, but do not hurt my children. Because they're innocent. So I think everybody can understand where Aaron Spencer is coming from. Does it make it legally right? Not necessarily. The officer says he's in prison. Spencer says he's in prison. He says, is he serving life? The officer said no. Spencer said no. He's going to get back out, isn't he? The officer said, like I said, I understand. Yeah, Aaron Spencer doesn't agree that people like this should get back out and see the light of the day. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. Lock him up. I think it should be treated like murder. Because you have murdered an innocent person. You have taken parts of their life from them that they will never get back due to people like this, especially a child. Spencer says he's going to get back out and he's going to go around and F more kids. Okay? So do you think that it's logical for people to come to the police when they can't do anything about the situation? If somebody was harmed, Ingram says, yeah, but can I say, officer says, hypothetically, let me ask you this, okay? Let's say, for instance, someone was armed. Spencer says, uh-huh. And the officer continues and says, and let's the father, rightfully so, not rightfully so, but understandably so, was upset, took the law in his own hands, understandably, trust me, I understand, and does something. And that father ends up going to prison. Where does that leave the little girl? I hate the fact that it even has to be a question. Like the parents can't do anything about it to protect their kids because it's not legal to do anything about it. You have to let the police and the justice system handle it because it's like, well, that person did the thing, but if you do something to the guy that hurt your child, you're going to be in jail. And so where does that leave your child? Still a fucked up child. Because nobody would be in this situation if those sickos would keep to themselves. There would be no worry about a little girl losing a parent that's trying to protect them, that wants vigilante justice. None of this was to exist without that predator. But because of that predator, it's either allow the predators possibly still be around, hurt more kids, or handle a predator and the the child loses a parent because they have to go to jail for protecting their kid. And a lot of parents would say, you know what, I'd go to jail for protecting my kid. I don't care. And say I would do it all over again if it meant protecting my daughter and other people from that type of sicko. There are people out there that would do that. And that's what's going to be the hard thing for this jury is are they going to think like Aaron Spencer or are they going to be like, no, it's against the law, we have to find him guilty because what he did was illegal. It is going to be a tough job for this jury because the main thing in this case is that what seems right in our hearts and maybe morally seems correct isn't necessarily legally correct. But Spencer goes on to say, why would that father go to prison? That'd be weird. Officer says, hypothetically. Spencer says, hypothetic, right? Officer says, hypothetically, if he does something. Ingram, we still don't live in a country where you can take the law into your own hands, okay? Spencer says, bullshit. Ingram says, okay, well, and then Spencer says, if the judicial system can't do a better job, Ingram says, okay, well, then you'd have to face the consequences and possibly take a charge with manslaughter. Or So right here, they're letting him know 3 months ago. They're letting Spencer know that if you do something, you're going to catch a charge for this. Like, they're already telling him, we will charge you and you will face the consequence if you do something. Spencer says, well, hypothetically, maybe that ARPist and that father can share a jail cell. And maybe that ARPist could be that father's little effing bitch. I mean, there are some prison guards that would allow that to happen, I'm sure. And they're like, you know what? I've got to go check on something else. So whatever happens here, I am going to check on another cell while whatever happens in this one happens. Would that make that right either? No. But Ingram goes on to say, well, that wouldn't happen. Spencer says, you know what I mean? The officer says, but you know who pays the price of all that. Spencer says, it's the child ultimately. Ingram says, yes, officer, it's the child. Spencer says, obviously, obviously. But the child's already been paying a price. That's the thing. Father, the family, the kid has been paying a price because of a sicko. And now the child's going to pay an even bigger price if the parents handle it the way they want to. And so is it better to let somebody handle that? I mean, is it better for an eye situation? I mean, it can't be like that because we can't live in that type of society, but or is it going to be worse when that child is like, well, it's been 3 to 5 years, and so she gets a phone call if she's lucky enough to be somebody that actually gets a phone call, because there are plenty of times that people's attackers get out and they forget to inform them that they've been let out. They've either been paroled out early or they're getting out of jail and they're back in society. And then that child is like, oh, great, I'm not safe once again because my attacker, my predator, is out on the loose again. And then what? The attacker is like, well, you're the one that caused me to go to jail, so maybe they want to get rid of them because they just had to serve time because of you. Or are they still continually obsessed with you? Or if it's been enough time, maybe the victim is not a child anymore and they're not the predator's type anymore. All of these are ridiculous scenarios, but they're all true scenarios that can happen because of disgusting pigs. Spencer says, but see, here's the deal. Her life has already been ruined, now hasn't it? So that's the wife that piped in and said that. Spencer says, yep. Officer said, so don't ruin it anymore. You know who ruins it? Is judges like Barbara Elmore, who let predators get away with stuff. And it may be that Elmore was following the law. And that is what she could give him. I think she probably could have given him more. Held him for more. And I think she could have put a monitor on him. I think they could have paid attention to him more while he was out on bond. I think there's a lot more that could have been done. But the problem is that the justice system still to this day does not take these cases as seriously as they need to be. Especially with the internet now. I mean, it's just more and more at these sickos' fingertips. And that's why you need to protect your kids at all costs from the internet. Know what your kids are doing on the internet. Know who they're talking to, even if they're in game apps or they play video games, if they're on social media. Know what is going on with them. Look at their Instagram, look at their TikTok, their Snapchat. Block those things from them. Get them off of roadblocks. Have certain parameters if they're playing games online. It's so scary for kids out there now with the internet, and then that people have easier access to kids now. It's horrible. And some parents don't pay attention. They just don't care because their child is being babysat by an electronic and they're not being bothered. Be bothered by your kids, because it is a possibility that one day your kid won't be able to bother you because of some sicko. Be bothered by your kids. Know what they're doing. So Aaron Spencer's wife says, so what can we do then? Can you guys go get him? Can you put him in prison? Ingram says, well, I mean, we have to do our investigation, obviously. Yeah, obviously. Jesus. And so that seems to be where the transcript ends that is attached. I don't have anything more to this transcript. So I don't know if there's even any more to this conversation. Surely there is. But is this transcript bad for Aaron Spencer? I mean, I think Aaron Spencer is just, and his wife are just basically kind of saying that they don't necessarily agree with how things are handled and the way things go, and that they're frustrated because these guys do just get a slap on the wrist and then they're just back out there to do things again. And what's really crazy is that these people have, like, prisoners have access to the internet in jail and in prison. So who's to say that it's stopping them from reaching out in jail? Yeah, could that add more time? Could they catch another charge? All these different things. Yeah, if it's monitored correctly. I've worked in a men's prison. I have stories about sickos like this. They don't care. They do not care. So let me know your opinions down below on your thoughts about this case. Does this make you view the case in a little different light than we did before, knowing that there was 16 shots, knowing that Aaron Spencer back in July was so raring to do something. But Aaron Spencer didn't do anything from July to October. He was like, okay, you arrested him. He was letting the courts handle it until Fosler went after his daughter once again. And then it's like, okay, now we're revving all this back up. Everything was fine when Fosler was leaving the daughter alone. But Fosler goes and screws things up by getting back into contact with Aaron Spencer's daughter, and now everybody's dealing with this because of Fosler's actions. Does that mean Aaron Spencer's actions are correct? Maybe, maybe not. But nobody would be in this situation if it wasn't for Fosler. But let's protect Fosler at all costs. He's the true victim in this case. No, Fosler's not the true victim. I could care less what happened to Fosler, really. I'm not saying that Spencer went about it the right way, but the real victim in all of this is Aaron Spencer's daughter. And I hope she is getting all the help that she can get, whether it's just therapy, whether it's meds, whatever Aaron Spencer's daughter needs to heal from all of this and learn and have the Spencer family just wrapped in healing and peace and working on moving on in a positive manner from this scenario. That's it for this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.